Misiurek, Senior Product Manager working on the Omniverse team at NVIDIA. And with that, we're going to kick it off first to, actually, I'll just quickly introduce. We have Pablo from Heatherwick Studio. We have Natalia from ARKI, George from xFigura, and Joachim from Reope. And so they're going to come up, give their presentations. So the first up is Pablo.
Okay, thank you, Sebastian. All right, so I'm going to try to go through these slides as quick as I can. But my name is Pablo Zamorano, and I head the Geometry and Computational Design team at Heatherwick Studio in London. This is us. We're about 250 people. We work globally. And today, I think I'm going to kind of focus a little bit about how we have managed to engage with this technology in a slightly more strategic way to make sure whether it has an impact for us. And hopefully, you guys can also use it. So the first step for us was to understand really, what our values were, And we needed to understand this to put them first before the technology. In our case, is making sure that our design actually gets to people. We're not in the business of creating space, but actually places. And then we have to put our people together so they can understand how they work at different kind of domains within the studio. So here we have our AI working group, which is composed not only of architects, but project managers, new business people, IT people, communication people, HR, and so on. So in this way, we can really understand how people actually work and how we do what we do as a whole, not only from one kind of perspective. Once you have that, you really have to understand your workflows and your needs. In our case, we're kind of a design-first studio. And so, sorry, these are the RIBA stages, slightly different to how you organize your projects here in the US. But you can see here kind of concept design has the same name. It's essentially the same, and it's really where we put most of our effort, So early stage stuff is where we actually spend most of our time. And this is our current use of AI in the studio. It also maps that, So high impact, early stages and kind of drops, when we start kind of going into design guardianship kind of role, So if you think if that's the case, then we can quickly say, well, that's the impact of delta that we can produce, It looks like the lowest hanging fruit, and that's okay. That means that people are not going to be afraid to engage with the technology, and then you can kind of extend the scope. After that, you really have to understand the limitations and the risk that the technology can bring. We know this is our case again. Most of the people in the studio use AI for researching, writing, generating images, videos, and 3D stuff. But what really happens is that maybe the tools that they're using are either, kind of exposing our IP or, using our copyright information to train their own models. And then we have to kind of react to that. How are we going to react to this? Are we going to generate our own software? Are we going to kind of license something else? Are we going to get back to them and ask them to change something? So we have to plan, implement, review what we have constantly, and then start again. For us, this is how it started. When we finished our strategy a year ago, we said, well, we're going to start with awareness, making sure that people can actually understand what this is about, and feel comfortable with it. Then, make sure that they start kind of using it. And then we move into kind of customization and control. This was the first iteration. Now I will say more than customization, it should be actually flexibility. And then we divided 3 kind of areas where we will be kind of focusing in the kind of a near future. One that focus on people, one that focus on data, and one that focus on tools. And with that, we could move into applying these things. So the first tool we put together to apply this wasn't really a coded tool. Was a policy that clearly helped people to understand very quickly what kind of tools they could use, how they could use them, where they shouldn't be using them. And with that in mind, obviously, we started developing our own stuff. So this is our own kind of platform to access the models we produce or we kind of accept, for generating images, videos, and soon 3D. This is another example of our own model context protocol integration into Rhino, where we can put, let's say, design briefs, and then we can also connect it to, let's say, an image of a model, and then combine them together to kind of have this, in a way, LLM to give us potential maskings. This is just one quick example of what it can do, but really bringing some of the kind of the good things that we found on stuff like Grasshopper into our design tool. But that's not all we use the Trinity for. So this is how we use it to access our knowledge. This is our own access to kind of our chatbot, where we fit in with, again, with our own publications, and in this case, aligned with our humanized campaign that uses neuroscientists research to understand how kind of flatness in buildings actually can be harmful for you. And then we can then query that, so we can actually ask the very same questions, so is it bad? Why? And then it will go back to, these racks that we put together in the background, and then give you kind of an informed answer, and then the links to the actual references so you can go and check them. Something like that. And then finally, I'll say that we have to always remember that, AI is not always right, and sometimes what you see may appear to be okay, may look good, and will be wrong, So critical thinking is probably the most important skill that you have to make sure that you have if you want to, really, really engage with this technology. And so the question isn't much about whether it is going to have an impact or not, but how much of an impact it will have to you. So that's my session one.
Thank you, Pablo. All right, next up, Natalia from ARKI.
Hi, everyone. My name is Natalia. I'm a co-founder and CEO at ARKI. This presentation is meant to be an appetizer, and if you guys want to see a full meal, then talk to me later on. ARKI helps architects and engineers automate drafting tasks. So as many of others that been on this stage before me, I'm also an architect, and I had an experience working at tech startups. That's where I learned about products. That's where I learned about how to speak with software engineers and interact with them and take the problems and turn them into products, features, and solutions. And of course, for us to build AI systems, we need someone who comes from the robust background. That's where our CTO, Mehdi, is coming from. He was part of the Tableau team when they got acquired by Salesforce, and he wrote a thesis on AI before it was even cool while he was still in university. That was a long time ago. And essentially, why I'm bringing the team up, because as was said on Wednesday, if you attended the panel in the evening, it not only takes AI expertise or technical expertise, but it also takes domain expertise, and then how then we combine both of them to make sure that our industry gets the benefit of those tools. We democratize them and we deliver them to the firms that are various scale. And I will talk about it a little bit more. So I always start with the problem, because when you try to conceptualize the product, the first thing should be jobs to be done or the problem to be solved. And that's how we think about everything. The problem that I personally come across with as an architect when I was still in practice was the question that would come up during the deadline, obviously, always. And the answer would be always buried. And we couldn't, as architects, find those answers in the firm, and we have to scramble, search for them. So that's where ARKI came from. I wish that I had a button where I can click and find a detail that I need right now at this point, foundation, cabinetry, anything, and pull it quickly. At the same time, after talking to hundreds of architects, we know that a person on average spends about 40 hours per week searching for answers. We also know that approximately 1 in 10 salaries in this industry is wasted on searching for answers again. And we also know that about 40% of construction rework is caused by design errors and omissions. All of this leads to us to conceptualizing and building ARKI, which we think of ARKI as AI teammate that helps you automate your complex drafting tasks using your internal project data. And I will show you in a second how this looks like. So ARKI integrates with Revit. It goes live in 1 day. There is no additional setup needed. All the data is processed by our system, by the backend. So there is no manual work involved. And our goal is to build a second brain for the practice, which means that we turn the dormant data into gold and help you essentially monetize it. Some of our customers spoke up and they tell us that they get about 20x return on the investment in ARKI. Hours are saved, 90% cut in search when we're talking about details, and construction documents are cut by 1/3. So going back to who we work with, a lot of things that we saw today, a lot of applications we saw today, in this environment accessible only to certain firms. My goal is to make sure that AI systems that are robust and built for our industry can be used equally by a firm of thousands of people and by a firm of 20 people in Tennessee who are doing a lot of residential projects. And we work with some of those firms of both kinds. Firms like HGA, we set them up on a pilot in less than 1 month. They already uploaded 6,000 items, and this is a firm of 600 people. So if we talk about high level, why firms choose us, think about it as a database with AI search. If some of you attended Sergey's workshop yesterday, Sergey was talking about embeddings and vector search, semantic search. There were some great diagrams, and that's essentially exactly how we treat the drawings. We use AI to deduplicate, categorize complex drawing data. There is a detailed version control, deduplication. We are able to identify details that are 95 to 99% similar and put them under the same parent. We also use AI to categorize data based on what is drawn, which means that even with the minimum amount of information, we can assign a CSI label and put all the doors together with doors, all the windows together with windows. There's zero manual work involved. We are working with some educational organizations as well as some software distributors, and we are fortunate to be invited to events like this one where there's a lot of minds that are working around the same problem. So think of ARKI as a place of context, not content. I know it might appear there's another CMS solution, but we don't think about us that way. We truly try to build an architectural mind map of information. And once all the data is uploaded, ARKI is becoming your coworker, but this is not our final goal. Our final goal to be able to pre-populate the drawing set to 40% before the project even begins. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalia. What we got next? George? All right. George from xFigura.
How's everyone doing?
Woo!
Awesome. Okay, so real pleasure to be with you guys. I'll give you guys a glimpse of what we're building at xFigura and what we consider the future of design intelligence internally. We're gonna guess this big button is the next. Okay, quick intro. I'm the founder and CEO of xFigura. I'm an architect by training, originally from Italy. I went to the AA, I went to Harvard, worked many years at Foster's with some ex-colleagues here as well. I really bring this mix of industry experience, but also technical. So I ran an AI consultancy service for medium and large size practices. So I really bring that deep technical knowledge as well. And I couldn't have been here without our now growing team, and we're in the new phase of early startups of team of 10 now. So you can see xFigura as an infinite canvas. It's a Miro-like canvas for early concept design stages. To date, we host more than 50 of the best generative AI models across text, image, video, and 3D. We're fully interoperable, so we have a Rhino plugin, Revit plugins coming out very soon. You can iterate and ideate with control, and this control element is key when designing. You can share with teams, with clients, all in one space. This is an older iteration of the interface. It is way better now, so importing sketches, textures, input images, 3D models, speckle integrations, we have all of that embedded in one. And so you can see xFigura, our mission is to empower architects, designers, and creative teams with AI native tools that enhance and not replace human creativity. We were fortunate to be working with several companies here. There's a short list of many of those we're working with. Also across universities, I love this question about the future of education and how that connects with industry. So we're partnering with lots of, now thousands of users from our initial launch. It was just about 6 to 7 months ago. Okay, so a quick pain point of where things are. There's a clear issue, and there's been some discussions today about this issue, about collaboration. The second one, especially in the AI stack of AI software, there's a clear issue about about enterprise security when using any of these models and connecting them in the enterprise context. And what's clear is that the AI noise is certainly real. So we decided to build out a centralized collaborative workspace. It is obviously built for architects by architects. And now we host 50 of the best generative AI models. This goes across text. We're going to add a whole suite of more text models. Across image, open source, we have fine-tuned open source models. We have all the closed source, the nano bananas, all of the fun stuff. Video, we've seen so much attention, especially Zaha's and the bigs, and many of their offices really dive deep into this storytelling, into this narrative experience. And then 3D models, we have a text-to-parametric model with a collaborator, and we're building out all of these, combining all of these actually with a single agent. So Visione is our agent, and it combines all of these in a text prompt through a single text prompt. Now, the baseline of this approach is keeping control. How can we give architects, the means to use these AI tools? So inputting images, 3D models with IFC compatibility, importing from Speckle. You can bring in your own LoRa models. You can generate text-to-parametric models, or you can use the Rhino plugin and soon have it in Revit. So this all starts from the single node. Is a supercharged node, super easy to use. It takes 2 minutes to learn how to use. You can then create your own workflow and navigate across modalities and iterate and share these with your teams. Now, a quick glimpse into some of these workflows. You can obviously import your geometry or send your image straight from Rhino. You can then create iterations, share this, and then move into video if you're working on a client-facing project. Now, this is just one of the many workflows I was really excited with. Can you go from a single image, iterate the facade, let's push the needle, let's go a bit organic. Then let's extract that single facade, the element, make it into a sketch, for example, just for representation or internal discourse. Let's apply a texture to it, a metallic, simple metallic texture. Let's keep coherence, input to output. Let's convert that then into a 3D model. Currently, it's an export as an OBJ, import it into Rhino. If you know how to use Grasshopper, you build a whole workflow, but you have certainly pushed the needle so fast compared to the traditional workflow, modeling it out, making a whole presentation board, and all of that. And certainly, it's all unified with Visione. Every week, it gets better. So imagine text to whole workflow. So you're creating your whole node structure. You have a 5-10 minute conversation. You turn your agent on, and then you can visualize all of your node structure, iterate, share it, branch, all of that fun stuff. So just to kind of wrap it up, what we're building out is our view of what design intelligence means for early concept design stages. Our intention is to augment and really start redefining this creative workflow. Small plug, we are actively fundraising, so we're interested in adding 1 or 2 industry experts or advisors to our cap table, so happy to chat. And if anyone's interested in joining us in defining the future of design intelligence, feel free to scan this code, and happy to chat. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, George. That's awesome. Next up, we have Joachim. Come on up.
All right. Can you hear me? Yeah. Lost my voice a little bit earlier this week. It's an intense week, especially when you come from the other side of the Atlantic. This is inaccurate. I'm an engineer, but my colleagues are architects who code. Just to start on a low expectations, not get too excited. Oh, there we go. These are our models. It's not AI. These are human beings in our team. They're all architects that went through the motions of Rhino, Revit, Dynamo, Grasshopper, Python, C#, all the way to just code all the time. We basically do very similar things to what core studios do, but we do it for others. Most of the time we deal with this. When you're angry at your design BIM software, we try to get you back to this. So it's all about emotions, which is hard for me as an engineer to talk about. That's why I work with architects. This project got us started, government project, graded, everything's offline here. And we went offline and set up a scripting server, started building out tools that you couldn't get from the World Wide Web anymore. And some of those tools enabled the project to save 10,000 hours and also $4 million in project costs. This was, 8 years ago when we got started. So we've been doing this for 8 years. I'm very committed to this consulting approach where we help others build tools. We started out with some phenomenal architects in the industry. And then we also added a bunch of other, both architect, engineers, and contractors that we help out. And more recently, more people here in New York. So I'm really excited to be here for the Tech Week. One thing that is very much top of mind for me right now is some of these like Gartner hype cycles that you always see at these conferences. They just put AI in front of everything and try to make it exciting. This is the 3 words that are kind of coming into the hype cycle now as we speak. And I think we need to kind of throw this out and take a step back and look at these 2 things instead. Because I think that there's a huge democratization of coding that's happening, software development that's becoming more and more accessible. This is slightly different to the days of Dynamo Grasshopper because scripting doesn't scale that well. Code has the potential to scale. You've seen these 2 words before, and something that helped me understand this model context protocol that you also probably have seen before was to do this little magic trick of just turning it around. It's a protocol for giving context to models. And suddenly it just makes sense for me. Oh, that's what it is. And you heard this from some of the other speakers as well. This context thing is extremely important because what we're working with today are foundational models. And when we understand what the word foundational means at some point in the future, we will understand that we need to give context to these models to make them actually useful in design and BIM work. In architecture and engineering, the context is extremely important, and we need to give it our firm's context. We need to give it our project's context. And this job of giving context to these models is what's going to make them useful in the future. This logo, familiar? Some nods? Can I get like nods? A little bit more vigorous, maybe? Yeah, okay. That's a good nod over there. This is Cursor. They started out by trying to predict what you would likely do next in your CAD software for mechanical engineering. They spent years on this. They thought, it's all rule-based, must be easy. We don't know anything about mechanical engineering. We're software engineers, but we're going to try. And they decided this is too hard. So they did some text stuff instead and coded something that helps other people code, and now it's worth $10 billion. So I think if you have this idea that I'm just going to go out and use AI to automate away the architects and engineers, and you're 10 times smarter than the cursor team, maybe you have a chance. I don't think that team exists. I don't think any of us are going to lose our jobs to AI anytime soon. But we are going to be challenged. This is our industry. I put together this little star diagram from GitHub stars. It's an indication of how much GitHub repositories are being used. These are familiar and known and loved repositories in our industry. There are people in the room who created some of this stuff. It's magic, and it's also very slow moving. Like you see the time scale here. This is like 10 years to get to 2,000 stars. Now, what happens with our industry, where we build physical things, meets the software industry where everything's digital, you get this. What I added to this one, well, the scale is different. Pay attention to this. This is not like bad statistics. It's a completely different scale. The three things I added here, right? Codex, Claude Code, and we'll call it MCP. So this is moving at a completely different speed than what we're moving normally in our industry. And what happens when this extreme speed hits us in our industry? There are some opportunities there that we can make use of. This is to scale. So this is moving a lot faster than what we normally see in our industry, how fast software is normally adopted in our industry. And there's a tension, a friction here, but it also is opportunity. Then you need a team of people that can help you, who understands code, who understands the industry. So that's my final pitch. If your logo was not on the list before, there is more space. We can take you on. If your logo's already there, we could probably do more stuff for you. And, oh, bonus, book recommendation. So understand the foundations of AI with these books, build good products with that book, and have a purpose of saving the world. That's my final comment. That was the bonus part. Thanks.
Thank you. I told you it was a diverse group of awesome backgrounds. So let's kick it off. So I've got a few questions here, and then we'll go through them, and then we'll kick off to the audience once we have a little time later. So first off, and this actually was not planned, but it was the last line of the last presentation, which is in line with superpowers. So if you think of AI as a superpower in AEC, what is the one power it has actually given you or your customers? And what superpower are you still waiting for it to deliver? And that's for the whole panel. Some are customized, but anyone can start answering.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think a superpower it's giving our clients is the solution space is so vast. And so there's definitely a common question of a homogeneity when using these AI tools. I'm definitely thinking, I oppose that notion. I think if you know how to use these tools, you can really push the design needle versus taking shortcuts. So I think there's a huge opportunity just in designing better spaces, more sustainable, push that creative cycle, and just deliver value architecture. It's really this conversation of where we should be pushing as an industry. What values should we be pushing forward? Is it an efficiency first, or is it to produce better architecture, for example? Certainly going to be interested in the next few years as the next opportunities in thinking what AGI and superintelligence means for all professions, but obviously we're here in AEC for architecture, bringing context history, memory, bigger context history, hierarchical planning, maybe a bit of whatever sentience means. What does that mean for the architecture workflow? And it's certainly going to be interesting, and love to build it out with you guys.
I'm just going to say something very quickly to build on that. I think for us, interacting with those firms, working with them, the most important for me is to make sure that they open up their mind to what is changing and they experience this cultural shift. So I always tell them, forget about ARKI for a second. We're going to be your partners who's going to open these doors for you. And you can come to us and ask any questions about the industry, share any anxieties you might have, and we will, to our best ability, to our best knowledge, share that information with you, whether it's about the MCP or any other new thing that's coming out.
Okay. I think the superpower I see for us, it's kind of making the tool disappear and giving any single person in the studio the ability to actually produce whatever tool they need for whatever purpose they need. So I think it fundamentally changes the way that we interact with software. And that's a real superpower. So I think in the conversation before, there was a discussion about, having software that is easy or hard to access. That wall is no longer existent, and that's the superpower I think this technology brings it.
Yeah. Don't get that many superpowers from AI yet. We code a little bit faster with Claude. It's useful. I think it's more for those companies we work for. There's this liberation going on where you don't necessarily need to depend on hundreds of software vendors to get your job done. You can actually make some of the tools you need yourself, and that's becoming easier and easier. And that's maybe the superpower that we also saw from Core today with Lattice. This is, you need really smart people to make Lattice. But that work is becoming more accessible, and there's a lot of smart people in the room that can build similar things. That's the superpower.
Awesome. That perfectly transitions into democratization of software development. So 2 years ago, at the AI Roundtable, or sorry, the R&D Roundtable, I think we were in the Center for Architecture. Pablo was there, and a few others. AI was mentioned just as one question, and mostly around image generation, and but mostly around image generation and single prompts. And so Cursor was mentioned, some of these others, so copilots, and now we have copilots, coding assistants, and a lot of different things. So how has that changed the way that developers around you work? And are you seeing non-programmers within the AEC space starting to code their own tools? And then are there any standout examples or tools that you see within either your engineers developing software, let's say software developers using it and kind of democratizing that?
I think that as a non-coder, I'm not a software developer, so I work with technical team. I'm an architect. I know our set of tools, and I'm pretty technical in them, but I don't write code on a daily basis. One of the recent discoveries that really helps us internally is using Lovable, because then you can very quickly prototype and communicate to whether your team or external users some of the quick and maybe extremely raw ideas that you might have. And if I draw a comparison between Figma Make and Lovable, I still chose Lovable over Figma Make.
I think it's definitely it's a really interesting question from xFigura's perspective. We built the agent, and so agent is a way of us facilitating the onboarding process. So it gives you prompt suggestion, model suggestions, and it actually will build out your workflow according. It will learn your prompting and actually iterate and then generate based on your own personalization. We're also building out an agentic RAG model. So think conceptually, you have a competition brief. Pop that competition brief and it'll prompt and generate everything with that context history. So you can actually make workflows, make it fully customizable, move really fast in a hyper democratized way. Now, I'm going to spin the question off from an educational perspective because that's where we left in the last conversation. I really believe the future, especially in education, we should be teaching students how to actually build these tools. And I teach at UPenn once a week, an AI and architecture prototyping class. We go deep technical, MCPs, agent, all of that stuff. I literally teach them how to vibe code, how to debug with ChatGPT, and how to go from a no-code background to actually building a basic agentic RAG, or we use Figma Make as well, and they've never used web interfaces, React, or any of that. So I like to say, all you need now, especially in the next few years, and we've come across this discussion, all you will need is a good idea. The execution, the back end, obviously you'll need a support team and everything, but you really push the need on what that means in architecture practice, and when learning that in education is really fundamentally changing.
picking up on that, because I think now with the democratization of coding and software development, you need to think hard about the products and tools you choose to use. Are you able to build on top of them and customize them to your processes? Because this is going to become more and more accessible. And it's also relates a little bit to risk mitigation. If you're dependent on 50 different software vendors to get your job done, and one of them falls out in the middle of a project when you need them, that's something that's gonna mess up your project. It's gonna mess up your finances, and it's gonna be a big problem. I think if you are able to have a couple stable platforms you can build upon, you're much better off than have a long list of single-use products. And especially keeping in mind that you will be able to build stuff yourself on top of these platforms. So keep this platform mindset when you think about democratization of code, that you don't paint yourself into a corner with lots of different products that you cannot build upon.
I'm going to disagree. So I think, first, democratization already happened. You know, it's out there. It happened the moment that we had a tool in our hands that it only required actually language to communicate with. So that automatically opened this technology to anyone that is actually able to communicate. There you go. And then if you have that, luckily what's starting to happen is that we got flooded with different models. You know, there are the amount of open weight models that you can find, especially now coming from China, is incredibly high. You know, and so in some places, like for instance, you know, this country and Europe, we spend a lot of time talking about, well, the 3 or 4 foundation models that everyone has to use somehow, and you know, we wonder about, you know, who's going to win, and you know, the AI war. But really, you know, there's so many much more models that are actually being developed, equally powerful, you know, much more kind of effective, that are already open to everyone. So this is truly democratic in that way. So I understand the risks that that brings, but we'll have to see whether, you know, having more people with ideas using this technology is going to make better things pop up, you know, or, you know, it's the opposite. You know, we have less people with, you know, less access to the technology that will kind of control the type of tool that you're going to generate. I think it's probably the first one.
Well, just a quick comment on that. I disagree. When I think platform, I think like AutoCAD is a platform. You can build stuff on top of AutoCAD, and it actually creates drawings you can build from. Of course, when you talk about like platforms in the more model sense AI world, I think you're better served by learning a little bit about ControlNet and Stable Diffusion instead of relying only on Midjourney to do all the things it does for you, because they change their terms, keep your data. But if you know a little bit the next level down and you think platform, you think I can build stuff with ControlNet and Stable Diffusion, then you're in a much more robust position from a risk perspective, and have a few of these platforms you can build on instead of picking the products that solves conveniently, because solves it really well. But it's not necessarily a good long-term strategy.
And just to summarize, I guess, this discussion, we think about our system as a set of Kido parts. So if there's a better model coming out, then we will use it. So I think if we approach designing systems this way, then we will be successful.
Awesome. Disagreeing is great. That's why we have such a diverse group of different interests here, and as well as different agendas, I would say as well. So on that, let's just talk about maybe an intelligence layer. So in terms of a old stack, new stack, do you think AI and AEC will mostly live as an intelligence layer on top of today's tools, as was just mentioned? Or are we heading to new, potentially AI native platforms that may replace them? And then also potentially, how should firms, with decades of Rhino, Revit, Grasshopper content and knowledge, plan for those?
That's a good question. So, and I think there's decades of knowledge and experience and resources and tools is really, really important. You have people who have spent many, many years learning how to use these tools the most efficiently you can, you should definitely build on this. The challenge between the new and the old, to me, is whenever you're using files, it's definitely part of the old system. Like files, there was a question before, can we get rid of drawings? No, drawings is a way to consume information that makes sense. It's the best, sometimes it's the best mode, but you can get rid of files. You can have a common data environment that's a database, but everyone goes in and works on it together, and there's no files flying back and forth. Every time you have to produce a file from a software through an API, you lose data, you lose information. And many of you have probably seen Greg and HOK talk about this lake house of his, and he's right. Conceptually, he's right. This is the new for me. It's not necessarily something on the web. It's not necessarily something AI. It's some place where we don't lose information by sharing files all the time.
I'm in the AI expert advisory group with the AIA, and this is we're working now on a report on how to train small and medium-sized practices, because there's a common misconception, and probably not in this room, but that medium and small practices can't compete or can't adopt these tools. So there's certainly, from an adoption perspective or what's next, there's a whole suite of things you can do, and that falls in line with the democratization topic. You don't have to have a deep, technical coder, computational designer to be able to engage, vibe code or build these tools or engage with all these tools. So there's the fundamental step in terms of getting there starts from leadership. If you don't have leadership on board, you cannot move fast. You cannot, you can't build a culture which embraces change and embraces this flexibility. So leadership, number one. If you're junior, have those monthly meetings to kind of pinpoint, show leadership what's up, and try to stir the pot a little more.
I think it's it goes into stages. I think in the beginning, sure, we will be using the technology to kind of augment what we can do with the software we're used to. And I think that's very useful, and it's a good entry point. Also, it's going to flag some, I think, disparities in the way that one technology operates versus the other one very quickly. And that's going to open the opportunity for, I think, the second stage, where we're going to start seeing more and more and more AI native software coming up. And honestly, if that doesn't happen, if it's not coming from a big company, it's going to be coming for the next generation of AI-enabled, humans, because all our kids can already do it. So yeah, I think this is a really, really interesting time, for big companies, and something to watch, and see how they kind of try to implement these things. It's way harder for them to implement the technology than for kind of new small startups. And I think, yeah, that's definitely going to generate or change in a way, kind of in the way that we interact with tools.
I think for me, before we go into AI native platforms, our thesis is you first need to understand what you already have, what kind of data already exists in your practice, what kind of information you can leverage. And I have to constantly remind our users and our customers that you can't skip steps. You have to be patient. I will tell a funny story. I had a firm coming to us and saying, we're currently using AutoCAD. We never got on Revit, but we are now thinking maybe we can skip the whole Revit dance and go straight into AI. And you guys are laughing, but it's just day to day, and people don't really know what to expect or how to go about it. So I have to go ahead and tell them, you have to rationalize the data set that exists. You need to make sure that when person quits the firm, the knowledge does not walk away out of the doors. You can actually retain that knowledge. You have to be able to harness this knowledge and build on top of it. And then I think we will be able to talk about that AI native systems and how we can use that data set.
Awesome. On that topic, I've heard this phrase used a bunch in this context online around AEC, but the idea of an AI brain. and it came up today. And so the question probably to everyone is, if every drawing set, 3D model, RFI, and email your firm has ever produced became one searchable AI brain, what's the most valuable question you'd ask, or potentially your clients or customers? What would you want it to answer?
Have we ever worked in that location? Do we know that client? Do we trust them? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
We will ask the things that we ask people, so I think that's kind of what we want to do with, I think, in the most common way of understanding what an AI brain is in an architectural firm, at least. You want somehow quick access to the information that usually requires somebody that may or may not be in the office, when you need that answer.
I disagree. I think, to me, the most important question coming from the architecture practice, being an architect, running my own architecture studio in the past, the question would be, where have we failed? And if we did fail, did we learn anything from it? Because if we failed and it's not been documented and we haven't implemented a way to fix it, in the next project, we will fail again. And that's how I think the opportunity, for example, for ARKI, and it's on the roadmap, can we go into the set of RFIs that are coded with the CSI code and see if we can learn which parts of the buildings failed during the mock-up and construction, and see that we can ingest this data from site back to ARKI and document, and in the future we improve those details, or maybe watch them closer, or maybe there's a different team that's working on that. And that would be my question.
I'll take it like in a future, like spin off the democratization question as well. And we're speaking hypothetically. I like to think of the 99%. What if we had all the knowledge and everything? I guess my question would be, how can we design the most sustainable, possibly affordable for the 99%, best or site contextual specific with all the constraint? It's kind of the meta question, which combines everything, but it empowers maybe the non-technical or the non-architects, as well as the architects, to kind of build, better spaces, better homes for the future.
Yeah, I think I would have a very different question. First, I would try to figure out if I can trust this AI brain. Ask it, like, where are you? Are you somewhere in the cloud in another country? Are you on-prem? How many times have you been cloned? Who else has access to exact same information? Try to figure this out, see if I can trust the answer it gives me first. And, if you built this brain yourself, you know where it is, you know where it lies. If it was built by a startup funded by venture capital that got pushed to make more and more money and at some point changed their terms, then suddenly that brain of yours is available for everyone here in the room. I mean, you don't want my brain, definitely not, but maybe someone else here has some really good brains we could use, all of us.
Awesome. I use ChatGPT to generate all these. So I have about 1,000, but we're gonna with some curation. But we're gonna turn it over to the audience because I want to make sure we have some time for people to ask questions.
Hi guys. I wanna.
Can you say your name and?
Hi, I'm David.
Hi, David.
As a background, I'm a consultant that comes from academics. I taught a workshop yesterday. About building representation as graphs, and that's sort of where my question is heading to, because so we're speaking of AI in AEC, and I think most of the topics that you've been discussing is about generative AI. But I'm also curious about, it's actually wonderful to see what we are doing with all of these models that are, being boosted over these past few years in the industry in terms of generation. But I'm also curious to see your opinion about, what else is being done in terms of creating foundation models that are actually specific for architecture, that will actually contain architectural features or somehow really encapsulate all of the complexity that building requires. I was talking to Pablo about some of this yesterday, about spatial AI, and I'm actually curious to hear what are your thoughts about what's been done in that sense. Are we actually investing into that? Is it something that you think is necessary to do, or will we just be capitalizing from what's being given to us from the generative side?
Okay, I can start this off. I have a somewhat pessimistic view on this. That this is a data problem, where like as an engineer, I have lots of data on all of the physical elements in this building. I have very little data on how you are experiencing this space. I know that it's kind of chilly as I'm sitting up here. I can get some sensory data, but I don't really know how you're experiencing it. And there's no digital record of your experience of this space. So how do you do a foundational model? How do you get all the data you need for a foundational model about space without having access to how humans experience space?
Okay, I can follow that. So I think to your question, yes, I do think that spatial intelligence is something that is coming and is getting built. Feifei Li, she has now a startup that is actually building exactly this, a foundation model based on spatial intelligence, and I think maybe to your point, Joachim, I think I'm slightly less pessimistic because in a way it works. So the world we perceive is not only based on, or what we see from the world is not only based on our language. So animals also perceive the world around them, and that means that there is another way to actually read space that is, it's just slightly more difficult to communicate. But that is happening, so these models are getting built. Data is being used, that data is being used to train the models. Can we do it? Well, not at that scale. It should be really good for us to get kind of familiarized with this. So I hope over this weekend, a lot of you work on Gaussian splats or similar technologies that kind of help us understand this world, to see what is around us, so we can be prepared, for the point where these models actually start having an impact. But I think it's going to come. It's going to take some time, but for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the future AI stack of the Omni tool is a full combination of, Gen AI, GNNs, regression model. Like, it's data set training, which if you look at Revit end user agreements, you can't actually use Revit data to retrain your models. Spatial intelligence, it will be a full combination. And if it's important in this room to remember that generative AI is not explainable, it's completely black box to date. So in terms of accountability, we're still in business. Think of responsible control and all this business. So we still need to be in the loop, but it's important to combine these all into one. So machine learning is certainly much more deterministic. So we need much more of these mechanisms to be embedded within generative models. You have the LLM, which can combine a trained data set, and optimize like a rule-based approach. Or you combine like the Grasshopper version or like a headless Rhino computer or something with. So I think the next step is combining. It's there's Finch is one approach. There's multiple approaches, and it does, I think, become a UI question. It's a bit of an overload in finding your one use cases, spreading out, or creating an ecosystem like we're trying to do.
And I think just kind of side note on this topic is, if let's say we have this system that has it all, how then we know what are the guardrails? And then it becomes an exercise of building those guardrails and essentially figuring out where does it stop, how do we control it, what are the right questions to ask, like we just mentioned earlier. And I think for us, in the view of ARKI, the ideal case scenario for us would be to train based on each firm's data set with their agreement, of course. You have the basic set of parameters, set of rules that are accumulated through knowledge, but it's anonymized. And in the same time, it's a single way street, so you can learn from the data, but then others don't benefit. Let's say if they're competitors, they don't benefit from each other's data. And each firm will get essentially a machine that can, let's say, start the project for them before the human touches the pen touches the paper. And I know that some of the larger firms in the world are already doing that. And we, again, want to democratize it and bring it to some of the smaller firms, make sure that have the same capabilities.
Thank you. This was touched on lightly already, but one of the defining features of the last generation of like really beloved software was its hackability. APIs and SDKs kind of became table stakes. I'm wondering, in what ways are you setting up your platforms to be open, and what do you see as the table stakes of this next generation of AI tools?
So tomorrow's the hack. We're sponsoring the prize as well. We wanted to make it xFigura a bit more hackable. We're building out an API. We're going to build it embed it into Rhino. I am a big advocate for as much open source as we can. We go as far as like in our little ecosystem, and we're new on the block. We extend all LoRa models. You can import your own LoRa models or train LoRa models. For those who don't know, these are style transfer models, 20 to 50 images. We're trying to, where we can, at least in these early stages, open it up. Certainly an important factor, especially when thinking industry at large. There's a bigger risk, wider. You know, we're not just talking about architecture. I think we need to have more of a, consolidated industry effort. Maybe fewer startups in the longer run, start consolidating, merging in some ways. But yeah, it's an interesting next step.
Great question. I think interoperability has already been mentioned as a huge problem in this industry. We already know that. So our approach to see the software that we build as a glue, so the more systems we can bring together and we can integrate with, the better. The final goal is to get out of Revit and be able to consume the data in any format it arrives and then make sense out of it.
I forgot the question. Sorry.
Open source. No, not open source.
Next,
APIs.
okay, yeah. We could go into data schemas and databases, all that. But I think next, I mean, we live in the world of APIs today. Like, we are some of the best people in the world at the Revit API. We know all of how it works and the data structures and all of that. Rhino API, same thing. So this is our bread and butter. Not our bread and butter. Sorry, English is not my first language. I think it's table stakes that's going to be in the next platforms is to have it available for customization. I don't believe in a product that's going to solve all the problems in all the projects that you have in this room. That doesn't exist. If someone's selling you that, you should not buy it. I believe in something that you can build on for your design process, because they are slightly different and there's good reasons why they're different. And we need to respect that and respect the experts that are using these tools, and not come next time and say, now we have this AI brain that's going to do everything for you, because it won't. It will not be able to. I think that we still need to put our human capacity into designing buildings, and that looks like users one level, but the next things we have will also have to have this customizability that you have in Dynamo and Grasshopper today, for example.
I agree. I think,
Is this recorded?
Okay, I disagree.
So close.
No, I was just thinking that, somehow kind of this hackability came with AI, so I think for the people that attended yesterday's Sergey's workshop, he explained, how MCP is actually a protocol, something that you can use with any model, with any software. And it already has, a standard kind of, as part of what it is. You know? So they solve it, from the get-go. I'm sure in our industry we still, trying to solve it. And you tell me if it's going good or not. But this already comes with it. So whatever it has an API, we can interact now with it. So again, so I think, yeah, we should continue pushing for these things. Any software we develop to be hackable, and we have to obviously put the railguards, in that interaction, because ultimately we are the responsibles of what comes out, But I agree that it's not one solution that will fix everything, It's just having the same approach that the technology already is giving us, which is open and it's already, standardized somehow.
Got it. All right. We have time for one more question.
I have the mic.
Okay. We have time for one good question.
So apologies in advance. I get to be the one that asks a philosophical question.
Could you introduce yourself?
My name's Nate Miller. I'm with Proving Ground. So the discourse around AI is, I would say, largely dominated by notions of speed, efficiency, and all manner of combinations of those types of things, right? We can work faster. We can, it's helping us extend our intelligence X, Y, and Z. I'm curious to know if philosophically, if anyone here has reflections on the value of difficulty and the value of engaging hard problems. Are there things today that should remain difficult for professionals? And are there things today that should remain slow?
Ooh. Are we going to become dumber?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like pouring concrete. You have to wait until it sets. It's a very interesting philosophical question. I don't fully agree that it's all about efficiency, because the Gen AI is definitely a time sink. Oh my God. Have you tried using these tools? You spend hours making images or coding things that end up not working or looking really terrible. So there's definitely this kind of thing that it makes a lot of stuff, but it doesn't necessarily help you implement things faster, at least not across the board. I think there's value in moving things slow and maturing ideas. We have, not in this room, but outside this room, other startups that do deliver design in a day or two, and the client understands absolutely nothing of why this design was put together. There's no maturity. There's no thought process of understanding how this space will work. And I don't think as humans, we're not going to get a huge upgrade tomorrow and then be able to consume lots of information in milliseconds and communicate and agree about things in minutes. It's still going to take time to have the conversation and mature the understanding of how we should build something. I think that thing is something that even if the technology can move fast and we can be more efficient, it's not necessarily always valuable. And also if you code, then you also know that you can get very quickly from zero code to lots of code. And then you can move slower when you start optimizing the code if you use AI instead of reading it yourself. So this is also very familiar for those of you out there who code today.
So to me, this is a great question, but it's more about quality than efficiency. If I'm an architect and I'm drawing a waterproofing detail from scratch, I probably shouldn't be doing that. And if I have 10 excellent waterproofing details that worked on site in the past and I can look at them in seconds instead of digging through my server for 5 hours, I will have a higher chance of succeeding on this project with having access to this information, to this knowledge. So I think efficiency and productivity, that's something that is just a hook, and that's what we talk about, as you said, Nate. But to me, it's about quality. We are able to deliver higher quality in the same amount of time and push the boundaries of the practice of the firm, and with less resources, deliver higher quality.
We can end it there. Thank you all, and thanks for the panel.